2025 has been an amazing year for me when it comes to roller coasters. I obtained 87 new coaster credits, bringing me up to a total of 255. I also got to make my first visits back to a few parks in over a decade, such as Hershey and Six Flags America. May it rest in peace. It's been a truly wild ride, and of course, one of my favorite things to do with new credits is figure out where to place them in my overall coaster rankings. I made a video back in 2022 ranking my top 25 coasters, and to say my rankings look different now than they did would be a vast understatement. So I think it's about time for an update. And since I've more than doubled my coaster count since then, it's only fitting that I should turn this top 25 into a top 50. For the sake of not making a ridiculously long video, I'm going to split this into two parts, with this being numbers 50 through 26 and part 2 being 25 through 1. Make sure to like this video and leave a comment if you want to see my top 25. And now with all that out of the way, let's get into it. These are my top 50 coasters, number 50 through 26. Rounding things out at number 50 is Legend at Holiday World. This is a bit of a difficult coaster for me because I've always had a blast riding this with its top tier laterals and great airtime pops. However, it does seem to have some very noticeable rough spots which make it hard to ride at times. That finale with the seemingly endless amount of sustained laterals is one of the more memorable coaster elements I've experienced. One great thing about Holiday World is that even though they have 3 wooden coasters, they all manage to do different things and provide ride experiences that don't just mesh together like they easily could have. CCI did a great job creating this layout, and I hope Holiday World keeps maintaining this coaster for years to come. Number 49 is Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point. Unfortunately, this one was a pretty big loser for me this year, as it was ranked in my top 20 to start the year off. I got one ride on it during my visit to Cedar Point this year on the Magic Seat, and honestly had my least enjoyable ride to date. The jankiness was much more prevalent and uncomfortable for me this time around, but regardless, I still have plenty of good rides on Magnum and didn't want to drop it all the way out of my top 50 for one bad ride. I'm hoping that next year I'll get back on it and be able to get a better ride. Number 48 is Rockin' Roller Coaster at Disney's Hollywood Studios. I have loved this coaster ever since I was a kid, and everything this ride has to offer from the launch, layout, theming, and onboard audio come together to make this a super fun ride experience. I got on it about a week before making this video for the first time in years, and I did end up dropping it a couple of spots, but it's still a great coaster in my eyes. I'm sad that they're moving away from the Aerosmith theme, but hopefully whatever they transition it to will be good as well. Number 47 is Banshee at Kings Island. I've always been much lower on this B&M invert than most people, but a good ride on it during my visit in May of this year was enough to vault it into my top 50. I absolutely love the first drop and sense of speed on this coaster. It's very smooth and forceful, being jam-packed with great elements, including that pretzel knot. My thing with Banshee though is that I feel like its inversions don't have the same amount of whip as other inverts like Raptor or Montu, which is my favorite part of this type of coaster. And the other thing is that I don't like the vest restraints at all. If you've watched some of my other videos, you may have heard me voice my contempt for these restraints, and I think they are especially awful on a forceful invert. Despite all the negatives though, it's still a great ride and is a great addition to Kings Island's lineup. At number 46 I have Batwing at the now defunct Six Flags America. This was one of the most shocking parts of my June roller coaster trip. I had liked this coaster when I rode it as a kid, but I wasn't sure if I still would given how awful Nighthawk at Carowinds was. But when I got on it, I was blown away by the ride experience. It wasn't rough at all, and I absolutely love the elements and the way you take them in the flying position. The vertical loop was especially great, and the ride overall just didn't have any dead spots like the B&M Flyers tend to in my opinion. I was extremely lucky to have gotten to ride Batwing not long before they shut it down for good, and I'm super grateful to have gotten to experience this amazing coaster one more time. Number 45 is Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood. While Aero Loopers are mostly janky and uncomfortable rides, this one is actually quite smooth and gives some excellent positive Gs. I usually find myself graying out on the inversions, and the first drop is sneakily one of the best I've experienced. The little pre-drop turnaround off the lift hill and then dropping into a tunnel is a great way to start off a coaster. The only drawback in my opinion is that it's a pretty short ride, but even still, Alan Schilke did a great job with this layout. Number 44 is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. Admittedly, this is a coaster I haven't gotten on in years, and I don't remember it all too well. All I do remember is that this is a great B&M hyper that is glass smooth and of course gives some great floater airtime while having one of the best settings for a roller coaster running along that small lake. Mako also features the shorter 7-car trains as opposed to the 8 or 9-car trains that a lot of the other hypers tend to have. This is definitely one of the better hypers, but from my limited memory of it, I do think it's a bit overrated with people claiming it as the best hyper out there, but I can always see my opinion changing once I finally get back on it. Number 43 is the first RMC I ever rode, and that's Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This single rail coaster is absolutely one of the most wild and out of control experiences out there in the theme park world, and it absolutely blew me away when I first rode it. I can't even point out any specific elements because the whole ride is just a blur from start to finish and will leave you sitting there breathless on the brake run. My only knock on it is that it is a bit short and the restraints aren't the best. This coaster was a great introduction to RMC for me back in 2020, and it's the first of many that will appear on this list. And speaking of which, the next RMC comes in at number 42 with Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is my lowest ranked of the iBox track RMCs and was a bit disappointing based on the expectations I had for it when making my first trip to Magic Mountain in 2024. I didn't get any duels on my rides, and I think the long slow lift hill in the middle is a bit of a buzzkill. All that being said though, the elements on this coaster are top notch as they always are on RMCs, and there are plenty of great airtime moments throughout both the green and blue sides of the layout. I'm really hoping I'll get to experience the Top Gun stall during a duel someday, and I could see this rising up in my rankings a good bit if I were to experience those. Number 41 is Diamondback at Kings Island. This is a coaster that dropped a bit for me this year after not getting the best ride on it. Now to be fair, it was a morning ride on a chilly day, so the conditions weren't the greatest, and I made sure not to drop it too much because of that. I still know that this is one of the best B&M hypers out there with great floater airtime and a great setting out in the woods. I've heard people say that it has a rattle, but I've personally never noticed one. I also love the visual of the splashdown at the end, which just adds a little something extra to this iconic coaster. Number 40 is Raptor at Cedar Point. A good ride on this and a bad ride on Magnum moved Raptor into my top 5 coasters at Cedar Point this year, which feels crazy given how stacked that park is. It starts out with that first drop that's a bit different from most inverts, since it straightens out as opposed to curving the entire way down. I really enjoyed that first drop this year since I actually got some airtime on it with that stomach lifting sensation. After that, the whole coaster just runs great, especially with it being over 30 years old now. The inversions are super whippy, which is a big reason as to why I like this more than Banshee, and you get those bone-crushing positive G's on the heel assist to end the ride. Number 39 is my first 2025 new credit to appear, and it's Candemonium at Hershey Park. I honestly think this ride is super underrated, as I always hear negative things about it from enthusiasts. The first drop and 5-second floater hill are top tier elements, and all of the airtime hills on the return trip give you great floater airtime as well. The trim brake going into that final helix is definitely a buzzkill, but I feel like it's so close to the end of the ride that it just doesn't affect things very much. I also got a sunset ride on this, which is one of the better individual coaster rides I've gotten all year, and it helps that it has that beautiful setting. My advice is do not sleep on Candemonium when you visit Hershey. Number 38 is another credit I got this year with Phoenix at Knoebels. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was truly terrified the first few times I rode this coaster. It is ridiculous how far you come out of your seat to the point that I'm shocked that smaller children are even allowed to ride. I still will never understand how this one's golden ticket awards over the likes of the Voyage or El Toro, but it's certainly a unique and amazing experience that all coaster lovers should try. And one more small thing is that the pitch black tunnel you go through after rolling out of the station on your way to the lift hill is a very nice touch. Number 37 is yet another new credit, and one that greatly surprised me, and that's the new for 2025 Wrath of Rakshasa at Six Flags Great America. I've always been a pretty avid dive coaster hater, so I wasn't very excited for this when making my first visit to Great America this June. I've always felt like dive coasters are one-trick ponies, as they usually are boring and forceless once you get past that first drop. Well, it turns out that Rakshasa is anything but that. I found it to be super well paced, with most of the inversions being very well done, especially that one near the end that's kind of like a diet barrel roll down drop. I also found it to be pretty smooth even when sitting on the very edge, which most people were saying is super rough. In my opinion, the best place to sit on this is actually the back because you get a lot of kick on that beyond vertical first drop. So even if you're not big on dive coasters, I urge you to give this one a chance. Number 36 is Apocalypse at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I love a good GCI Woody, and this one is no exception. These are usually characterized by their twister layouts and rapid fire elements, which is the type of coaster that I absolutely love. While this is certainly one of the weaker GCIs out there, it was still running great during my 2024 rides and had that classic wooden coaster rumble without being rough. As crazy as it may sound, I have this as a top 4 ride at Magic Mountain, and I will stand on that hill. Number 35 is another GCI Woody with Thunderhead at Dollywood. The last time I rode this was back in 2024, and it was running as good as ever. As much as I like Apocalypse, I find Thunderhead's layout to be a firm step above it with all the crazy laterals, airtime pops, and the station flyby. I've started seeing people say that this is the best coaster in Dollywood, even over Lightning Rod, and while I can't quite get on board with that, I can 100% understand where they're coming from. This is an amazing ride and certainly one of the best wooden coasters out there. Number 34 is Wind Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. During my only trip to this park back in 2021, I got plenty of rides on this and was a huge fan of the small scale RMC. The barrel roll down drop is a cool and unique way to start out the ride, and the plethora of airtime that follows makes this yet another elite ride by the Idaho-based manufacturer. My only drawback with it is that at the time I thought the off-axis airtime hills at the finale were a bit too strong to the point of being a bit uncomfortable, kind of in the same way that the quad down on Air Force 1 is. That's just a minor nitpick though, and this ride is awesome. Number 33 is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. This hybrid conversion of the Georgia Cyclone is short, but packs a lot of power into its layout. The first drop gives some crazy ejector airtime in the back row because of it having that twist, and I just love the choice of elements after that with the reverse cobra roll and wave turn. But even still, I think the best moment of the ride is that ejector airtime hill right after the second turnaround that dips down into the support structure. It'd be nice if they had decided to add a third lap to this, but with what it does have, it makes the best of use of it, and it always enters the brake run with a head of steam. Number 32 is Orion at Kings Island. I've been on all four of the Giga coasters in the US, and in my opinion, this is the weakest one. It has an amazing first drop, and the high off the ground turns that follow actually grew on me quite a bit this year during my visit in May. The thing that kills this ride for me though is the trim brake on the large camelback that significantly slows you down for the rest of the layout. It's one of the worst buzzkill moments on a coaster and just hurts the whole experience. Even with that though, it's still a Giga coaster, so you know you're going to get a great sense of speed and just an overall super fun ride anyway. Number 31 is Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is the only coaster by Premier Rides to be featured in my top 50, and I think there's a lot to love about it. First of all, I thought the launch was pretty punchy and does a great job getting you up to just the right speed to experience that sustained hang time on the massive vertical loop. I actually hadn't really seen anything about this ride before my trip to Magic Mountain, so when it came to a stop and began the backward launch, I was very caught off guard in the best way possible. Even though it's a short ride, it's a very good one, and I hope to make it back to Magic Mountain soon to get more rides on it. At number 30, I've got a coaster much smaller than the last two, and that's Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. When I went to Kentucky Kingdom, I went back and forth all day on whether or not I liked this or Storm Chaser better, and for me the underdog won, with this edging out the win for my favorite coaster in the park. I remember the first drop feeling taller than it actually is, and the whole ride being buttery smooth. I've heard the trains on this are uncomfortable, but I didn't have any issues with them myself. Lightning Run is also one of my favorite coaster finales, with that outer bank going into the run of airtime hills. We're finally getting another one of these Chance Ride Hyper GTX models built with Hot Wheels twin mill racers at Mattel Adventure Park, and I'm excited to see how good that one will be. Just breaking into the 20s, I have Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I never expected to be as high on this ride as I am because flying coasters, while enjoyable, are never anything special to me, but this one is absolutely crazy. First of all, I find that its layout manages to pack a lot more in than the Superman clones, and of course the pretzel loop is absolutely diabolical. I also think you just get some great visuals on the ride, starting out with one of the most terrifying lift hills out there. Staring straight down while you go up and the hill slopes down is not for the faint of heart. Then after that you get some spectacular views of the park in the first half of the ride as it goes through some turns. This is easily the best flying coaster I've ridden, and I don't see that changing, at least until I go to Japan someday. Poetically, my favorite flying coaster is followed by my favorite invert, and that's Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa, coming in at number 28. I honestly went into my visit to Busch Gardens this year expecting to drop it, and after a lackluster first ride, it was looking like I was going to. But I came back later in the day and got an amazing ride in the front row that reminded me just how good this ride actually is. It really does have an amazing setting diving in and out of those trenches, and the inversions are all super forceful, especially that Batwing which tries to rip your feet off. Like most coasters, this did drop a few spots in my rankings, largely because of new additions to the list, but my opinion on how great this B&M invert is remains unchanged. The trend of B&M favorites continues even further at number 27, with Superman Krypton Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta Texas being my favorite floorless. When I made my first visit to Fiesta Texas in 2020, I had no idea this coaster even existed and was shocked when I liked it as much as I did. Never did I think I would be ranking it over Wonder Woman, and yet here we are. B&M did a great job making use of the quarry wall to have nice interactions, and the entire ride was buttery smooth and super whippy on all the inversions for me. It also just looks impressive, and when I'm looking at it, I have a hard time believing that it's under 170 feet tall. When you go to Six Flags Fiesta Texas, do not overlook this masterpiece. And finally, the last coaster to appear in Part 1 at number 26 is Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. I got to make my first visit to Great America this year, and it has one of the deepest coaster lineups out there with so many good ones to offer. And out of all of them, Raging Bull stands as my favorite. This B&M Hyper is very untraditional as it has more of a twister layout as opposed to the out and back layouts filled with camelbacks that you would typically see. And even still, this has better airtime than most of the other Hypers I've ridden. It may not have as many airtime moments, but the ones it does have are elite, most notably that first drop. Taking the first drop in the back row is a top 5 first drop, period. A lesser talked about moment is the drop off the mid-course, which is also a pretty violent moment of ejector airtime. Raging Bull is an overall amazing coaster that is absolutely worth the hype. This ends Part 1 of my Top 50 Coasters countdown for 2025. Let me know your thoughts on my rankings in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for Part 2 of this series where I'll count down numbers 25 to 1. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.